Do you ever wonder whether or not you should fire a client, or how to know the difference between a nightmare client and a client that you could work things out with? I'm sharing with you the difference and how to know when the time is right. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Rachel Pedersen, founder of Social Media United, the leading online university for social media managers. People ask me all the time, Rachel, I have this client and X, Y, and Z situation came up. My client is texting me in the middle of the night. People ask me, how do you handle these situations? And one of the crazy things is there's a very good chance that it maybe isn't a good fit. So how do we identify whether or not a client is a nightmare client that needs to be fired, or a client that has potential that just needs a little bit of training? Let's dive on in. Have you ever had a dog that maybe had a bad habit? Maybe you got home to discover that your dog had jumped up on the counters and torn apart all of your mail. And overall, you love your dog, but there's one or two habits that they've caught that leave them a little less than desirable. My question to you is, would you get rid of your dog? Or would you maybe invest a little bit of money into retraining that dog? Now, I want you to think about the opposite end of the spectrum. Have you ever met a dog that was absolutely vicious and tore apart animals and furniture and even potentially biting humans? That's not a dog that you necessarily want to take the time to train. As crazy as it sounds, your relationships with your clients are the same way. There's a big difference between an absolute nightmare client that tears apart the people who come into their life and a client who just needs a little bit of training and boundaries. Now, one of the ways that you can identify whether or not your clients are nightmare clients or just needing a little bit of training is by implementing boundaries from the very beginning. And unfortunately, the only way that you can do this is through consistency. If your client is always texting you or calling you in the middle of the night and you've been answering, you've trained them to believe that that is normal and acceptable. When you tell your clients, here are the ways that I can communicate and here are my hours, you will need to ultimately make sure that that's exactly when you respond. Anything outside of that is outside of the boundaries and you're not going to respond to that. So you have to make sure that you create and enforce the boundaries that you've put into place. But what happens when a client starts to step over those boundaries? What happens when you've explained the boundaries over and over again or how you work, yet your client is maybe freaking out on you or calling you multiple times a day? Maybe your client is trying to send you Facebook messages 24/7 and you're going crazy. There is a time to recognize that this is someone who can't necessarily be trained, especially if you've built in boundaries and enforced those boundaries, yet they're continually ignored. Another sign that a client may not be a good fit is if you discover that the client is manipulative, meaning there's a sob story when it comes to a late payment every single time, or perhaps maybe your client is asking for a ton of work outside of the scope, and when you say, I can't do that unless we upgrade to this and this package, the client pushes back and says, don't you care about my business? And there's just a level of manipulation. If there's manipulation involved, ultimately it's not going to be a good fit because it's tough on you mentally and it's pulling you away from the other clients who respect your boundaries and your sanity. So there's a fine line between the client who is pushing the boundaries and the client who's completely overstepping them without regards to you and your well-being. Now, I have an awesome resource for you if you're in a place where you're like, I need to fire a client, I don't know exactly how to do it, I would love some more clarification about the process. I actually have an entire training on this as well as a script for tactfully firing clients. And that is all available to you inside of Social Media United, which you can try for just $1 for 7 days. Go to the link in the bio beneath this video and be sure to give me a thumbs up, follow my channel so that you don't miss any videos, and leave me a comment and let me know what you found most valuable in this video. I'll see you next time.